Today, the United States is reeling after two immeasurable tragedies have taken place within 24 hours of another, and each one of them have connections to the music community, one closer than the other. First, we reported yesterday that Blink-182 was on lockdown after the incident in El Paso, Texas, took place basically across the street from them. And then overnight, we've heard about the tragedy in Dayton, Ohio, and we learned that the suspect was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, or believed to have been wearing a hooded sweatshirt, that featured merchandise and lyrics from the band The Acacia Strain. The vocalist Vincent Bennett commenting on that. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But the most important thing here for us to focus on as a music company is that there is a conscious effort as a result of the Acacia Strain merchandise being involved to place some degree of blame or infer that there is a connection between heavy music and these sort of events. Because of some of the language that is used in this music, because of some of the aggressive tones and sort of the ambiguity towards religion. And you're seeing this on both sides are placing some degree of blame on heavy metal and also video games. And I'm going to explain why it's impossible and grossly unfair to connect these incidents to heavy metal music or video games very specifically, because there are actually four key factors and commonalities between people who commit these acts that would serve as a much better predictor for this sort of behavior that happens in these very tragic events. I'm going to try to keep this as factual as possible. Obviously, people are going to say that I'm biased towards heavy music, given that we spend a great deal of time focusing and lifting up heavy music. So I'm going to do the best that I can to try to keep this as factual as possible. So I'm going to focus mostly on the Dayton, Ohio incident. And what we have up on the screen now is several tweets from the Acacia Strain frontman Vincent Bennett, who learned that this suspect was wearing merchandise from his band. He said, "What happened in Dayton is horrifying. Even more so to know that the shooter was wearing a TAS hoodie is making me sick. There is no excuse for this. Anyone who knows anything knows we don't condone this behavior. No one has the right to take another's life. We will be taking action to help the families and the victims however we can." He added, "Music is an outlet. Music should purify. Use art as a positive outlet for your negative emotions. If you feel angry, turn to music, turn to creation. This has to stop." And then there were people who were blaming him. And then there were also people who were basically making the inference that heavy music had something to do with this. Mainly, I would like to turn your attention to an individual who is with the media in that area, in the Ohio area. And he is Mr. Jim Heath. Mr. Jim Heath posted a tweet that I found to be absolutely egregious in the way it appeared that he was steering the blame or some degree of blame towards heavy music. It was the way that he worded his message. And he says, "Suspect in Dayton was wearing shorts and a black sweatshirt that read, 'No heart to fear, no soul to steal.' The slogan is believed to be from a hateful and vengeful song called Ramirez by the Acacia Strain, a metalcore band." Now, he's doing several different things in this message, and the language he uses appears to be very carefully constructed. First of all, he says hateful and vengeful. He uses those words. You can make those inferences, but again, we're going to get to this. The commonalities, the key factors between these individuals are a much greater indicator than anything that they could be wearing or what they look like or anything like that. And we're going to get to that in just a second. So he points this out, and there are a lot of people who are trying to steer this in different political directions, and what I believe are for their underlying political motives involved. And I'm not getting political here, but I'm just going to point out my observations. You have people on the right who know that when these sort of things happen, there are people who call for more gun control. So they want to point the direction somewhere else. They want to say this is a moral issue. They want to say this is a video game issue. They want to say this is a heavy metal issue. And then you have people on the left as well who often call for more gun control after these incidents occur as well. And even some fringe people in this area would also point that heavy metal has this bro culture sense of entitlement to it, and they feel entitled, and there's some sort of underlying reason why white males or so who listen to heavy metal may want to go and commit these sort of acts. So there is a degree of criticism coming from both sides, just from a factual standpoint here. Now, I can tell you that I have seen an image of an individual on the ground in handcuffs, appearing to be deceased, that does look like it was the individual responsible, but I can't individually confirm that. But I have seen the photo of him wearing what does appear to be merchandise from the Acacia strain. Again, that is no reflection upon the band whatsoever. It's interesting, you don't hear people when someone's wearing a Nike shirt or you name any other brand being held accountable if they wear this during some sort of an incident. So with all of that said, I want to get to the 4 key commonalities between people who tend to commit these sort of acts. Now, obviously, there are different variables you can throw in there, but I'm going to stick to these 4 key components that almost all people involved in these incidents have in common when these things occur. Mind you, none of them involve video games and none of them involve heavy music. These people may use that to become involved in these sort of things, but they are not the underlying root causes of what leads them to commit these acts. And because they're not particularly glowing or they're not salacious, you're not going to hear people focus on these root causes, because the harsh reality of it is there really isn't much of a way to address the way that these people are becoming motivated to deal with these situations. So people like to point the finger at other things like video games and heavy music. So the first commonality here is that usually people involved in these incidents have experienced some sort of early childhood trauma. This is according to a study from the LA Times. Okay. The nature of their exposure could include parental self-harm, physical abuse, neglect, domestic violence, etc. And that is a precursor to mental health related issues. So that is the first commonality that has been seen in people where they have enough data to study these sort of things, going back to 1966. Secondly, every person had reached an identifiable crisis point within the last week or several weeks leading up to the incident. There was something that occurred in their life that led them to become so distressed that they felt as though this was the only option. They said this is identifiable. So if there are people closely around them in their life, this is something that you could possibly be able to identify and be made aware of. Third, this is important. The individuals leading up to these events had studied the actions of other individuals who had committed similar acts. That means that these folks involved, where available, they had studied the individuals involved, and that is why you're seeing a lot of the media refrain from personally identifying information about the suspects involved. And then fourth, they each had the means to carry out their plans. Once they decide it's no longer worth living, they are able to find a site to commit the act, a site that's accessible to them, where they feel as though there's minimal security and they're going to be able to carry out this action without being interrupted. And then they're able to usually obtain their method, their weapon of choice from close family members. That is something that is often seen. And then workplace incidents usually involve legally obtained weapons, they say. So this is where we are right now. As I mentioned, those factors are almost exclusively common between these individuals. If you go back and you look at incidents where heavy metal music is involved, go back and look at I challenge you to go back and look at the number of suspects involved in these incidents that were specifically listeners of heavy metal. They will be the gross minority in these tragic incidents. That is not a factor that is a predictor of these incidents occurring. Likewise with video games, that is something that they latch onto when there is that is a factor that was a hobby of theirs. that's something people like to latch onto. Same with heavy music. So hopefully this is something that people who are hearing heavy music are not deterred from listening to heavy music because they feel as though bands are out there intentionally spreading messaging that's going to inspire people to commit harm. That is not something that anyone in the heavy metal community is endorsing whatsoever. And if they are, they're a garbage human being and they're not a part of this community. So that is all for now. We're going to keep a close eye on this very, very tragic, sad situation. We will keep you posted on where the public discourse is going as it pertains to our very specific marketplace, the heavy metal music scene, the rock music scene, and how it's being unfairly scapegoated in a tragic situation. But I felt the obligation here to just point out from a factual standpoint that anybody who's actually trying to blame video games or blame heavy music is just outright incorrect, and it's totally uncalled for. All right, that's all for now. If you're new here, you can subscribe to Rock Feed with notifications on so you don't miss out on breaking hard rock and heavy metal news. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch up with you very soon.